Even a sort of rugby player's slightly softer mouth guard might actually put some more pressure on that top jaw.
Just something to dampen the pressure.
But doesn't it normally take sort of a good 6 weeks to heal if you have
this is it.
A jaw fracture? And it's been 4 weeks and a day, has it not, since it happened?
Yeah, it's an incredibly quick return for him. Obviously, we don't know the extent of the damage that was done to his, his teeth and his jaw in that time. But whatever work he's had to have done, it's an amazingly fast comeback. And there he is.
And there he is down in the grandstand. So Fernando Alonso, absolutely committed. He's looking forward to the regulations that are coming next year, but he's jumping back in the car in 2020.
How good does that lid look? That's what it's about. I like that.
There we are.
The back retro stylings.
Recalling the glory years. Always rapid.
Absolutely mega.
Rapid from the first moment he sat in a Minardi.
Yes.
Back in 2001 when he made his debut. Same Grand Prix as Kimi Raikkonen.
Fun story. Back in those days, Minardi obviously had their two-seater program and very often called on their F1 drivers to do some of the two-seater laps. A photographer friend of mine, who shall remain nameless, was shooting and Paul Stoddart at Minardi said, "Do you want to go in the two-seater?" Oh, nice. And he was like, yeah, great. It was like, well, which of our boys do you want to go with? And it was Tarso Marquez or Fernando Alonso. He was like, oh, I'm not too sure about the Spanish chap. Went with Tarso Marquez.
Oh, no.
Great driver in his own right.
Yeah.
But I think even he would admit not quite a Fernando Alonso.
Well, never mind. Can't win them all, Will.
Indeed.
What was the two-seater like? Much of a view?
So the F1 two-seaters are an interesting one because you are at the same level as the driver in front, so the vast majority of what you see is the headrest. But you do see out of either side what's going on. I was very fortunate to get in the Minardi two-seater with Alain van der Merwe, who of course is the medical car driver now. British Formula 3 champion, brilliant racer, and that was in Kailami in South Africa, and Alan of course is South African, so it was a really wonderful experience. And I had another go in the two-seater with Bruno Senna in Abu Dhabi, and Abu Dhabi is honest. I know people give it stick as a track. It's the braking zones and the intensity of that, those long straights and then putting through and the double rights as you come into the hotel. It's a cracking track, really great fun. So the two-seater, brilliant fun. I've been in the two-seater IndyCar as well, and that's different because the back seat in the IndyCar is slightly raised, so you're looking through the roll hoop. And I was at Sonoma in California, which is just a brilliant track. It's like almost like a sort of a mini Spa-Francorchamps in Wine County in America. And I was looking through the roll hoop, and I had a silver helmet with a red stripe.
I know where this is going.
And it was Mr. Mario Andretti. So getting the back end out properly on it, and to take a lap with Mario Andretti is something I will take with me to my grave. It was just, as being one of those wonderful experiences that you can't really put into words. It was just an honour, an utter honour.
I can imagine.
And he still does the two-seaters,
Yeah,
Mario
he loves it. He loves being part of it.
Such a lad. Yeah, what a guy.
One of motorsport's absolute greats.
Well, I think the greatest of all time across all categories. You could put Mario in a pedal car. Yeah, you put him in anything and he'd win. And that's it, not just in one category. In everything he ever contested, he was the man to beat. There aren't many drivers in history that you could put on that same level. Sterling Moss, maybe? Well, definitely.
Yeah.
For me, Sterling and Mario, the two greatest all-rounders.
Such a skill to be fast in everything. Something that Fernando Alonso, as we go on board with him, has been trying his hand at since he left Formula 1.
Well, and also, taking multi-discipline to an entirely new level by not just sticking to single-seaters or jumping in endurance cars, but going and doing the Dakar. They should have sent him out yesterday. With all that sand on track.
He would have been used to it.
He would have been fine.
So he's got his second leg of the Triple Crown that he's been chasing. Hasn't worked out for him. Incredible debut at Indy. but hasn't worked out for him when he went back last year. Didn't really seem to have the car underneath him at any point of I was going to say month of May, but it wasn't. It was August.
Yes, indeed.
He never really seemed to figure in that one. But I think it's been fantastic, just generally, to see someone that we know is unquestionable in his talent, taking it to different series.
What I loved was Fernando's... Oh, hello. What I loved was Fernando's first year at Indy, and obviously watching him progress through the practice sessions into qualifying, but then watching the race, because it wasn't just his first IndyCar race, it was his first oval race, it was his first super speedway, and watching how on the first restart he dropped back, on the second restart he held position, and on the third restart he was making moves. And just watching how a driver like Fernando learns as he's driving, watching the cogs click, and then seeing the guy get himself up into the position where he could and arguably should have won that thing if the Honda lump hadn't let go.
Oh,
it was...
That's it. We just wanted the conclusion, wanted to know.
Absolutely. But it was... from a purely theoretical perspective of watching how a racing driver, and one of the greats, operates, how he works. Now, look at this. Lights at the back of the...
Did you just interrupt
Ferrari.
yourself?
I just interrupted myself.
That's Murray Walker territory. I love it.
Those lights at the back of the Ferrari. Now, we saw them last year.
We did.
We saw them because what Ferrari are trying to do with that is essentially they've left the torch on their camera phone on the back. Those lights are to highlight so they can film and show the gap between the tyre and the floor. So ultimately the sort of the sidewall and the compression and how it is shaped around the track. Because obviously this year the new regulations around the rear of the car and the floor, where it comes in, are all... Oh, is he doing okay? Yes.
Yeah, I just checking.
Are all tuned towards airflow around those rear tyres. So those lights are so that Ferrari can get a decent view of what these new spec 2021 tyres are doing, how that tyre wall is compressing, the shape of it, see if it is as they believed it would be when they were given their 2021 development tyres last year. And obviously that is huge for determining whether that floor and the design that they've made is going to work as they hoped, because it's all dependent on how those tyres will be once they're actually on the car and out on track. So you see those lights, that's what they're for, basically to shine a light on the rear tyres.
Perfect explanation.
I mean, it's still early and I haven't had coffee. It wasn't the best explanation, but
it'll do.
Thanks.
It'll do. I enjoyed it. I'm sure many people did. If you want to get in contact with any thoughts, questions, anything at all, hashtag F1 testing, and we will try and rattle through them across the course of the day as we take you through the 8 hours coming up. So you're stuck with us two for 90 minutes more. Then it's Martin Brundle, Karun Chandhok and David Croft taking you through to the lunch break. Then we'll repeat the thing later on for 4 hours again. Back on board with the Alpine of Fernando Alonso.
And it's interesting seeing those lights on the back of the Ferrari and sort of talking about that airflow around the back. Sam Collins and I were talking about this on F1 TV Tech Talk yesterday. And ultimately it all pulls back to the teams still trying to recoup what they'd learnt in 2009 and the double diffuser era in Formula 1. And ultimately everything that goes on at the rear of the car has been about the airflow around the rear tyres and how you can make that work with the floor in tandem to reproduce that effect. And that's what brings the downforce at the rear of the car. So by limiting that floor space at the rear, by trying to affect the way that the teams can direct that airflow, they're trying to limit what they can do from a downforce perspective at the rear of the car. So it's all about the airflow, and they're all about deflection and how those tyres are working at the rear. So that's why those lights are really, really important, to see what those tyres are doing. and whether those vortices, whether that airflow around the rear is going to be as they expected it, because this is the first time they've actually had their hands on proper, legitimate 2021 tyres, and will be able to understand for the first time whether the construction is as they believed it had been when they were given the development tyres last year. And that's why we saw those lights on the Ferrari last year when they were running the 2021 development tyres.
Half an hour gone. Mazepin fastest on a 1:34.5 with 7 laps on the board. Then it's Carlos Sainz on a 34.5 as well. 6 laps completed for him. Fernando Alonso has completed 6 laps as well. He's on a 34.9. Sergio Perez, 36.1. He's just done 3 laps out there. Yuki Tsunoda has done 8 tours of the circuit. 5 for Hamilton, 4 for Latifi. Ricciardo has just done the 3, as have Giovinazzi and Sebastian Vettel. We're checking in with the fastest driver in the session so far. And Mazepin, after having a slightly easier time than Mick Schumacher, who had hydraulic problem yesterday with the Haas, that limited his running. Mazepin not suffering with those issues and continuing to get up to speed. I was covering with Jolyon Palmer yesterday how it's rough to be a rookie in this era with simulation rather than testing. Not a lot of time as he goes wide at turn 13 with the fastest middle sector of the day so far. But these rookies with a lot to get their heads round, but they have a lot of experience at this circuit. They were racing here in Formula 2, all of the rookies in the Formula 1 field this year. Yuki Tsunoda and Nikita Mazepin were doing battle at about, well, not there, by the pit wall on the left-hand side of your picture, when they were fighting over victory a few months ago.
Yes. How many penalty points did you get for that?
quite a few. And Nikita Mazepin's been questioned about that, and he says he doesn't expect to take the same driving style that he showed in Formula 2 to Formula 1. Probably a good thing.
He's changed his tune since the end of last year, though. I asked him about exactly the same thing at the end of the year when he signed with Haas, and he's basically said words along the lines, well, the FIA's always had it out for me, and then said, that's just the way I am. I will go to the limit of the regs. I will push to the limit and do what I can within it. So that's quite a turnaround from that.
Yeah, he was not happy. He was given a penalty in Spain last year for rejoining the wrong side of the bollard. Thrilling, I know, stay with me. And then he crossed the line first in Spa in the feature race for Formula 2. But he was given a penalty that promoted the driver that you're on board with to the victory. And
then he drove into the board because he was not a happy guy and almost knocked poor Yuki off his feet.
Yes. So it was, yeah, he wasn't maybe at the back end of last year, not in a happy place.
The move that he put on here, though, was that was beyond the pale. That wasn't an acceptable racing manoeuvre. I think we can agree on that because the stewards agreed on that.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. Funnily enough, in exactly the same part of the racetrack, the Fernando Alonso said you always have to leave a space.
You always have to leave it to space every time. Exactly, all of the time. You have to leave it to space.
So he's now saying that he's going to temper the driving style. And 33 minutes gone then, as we check in. That's a good shot of the rear of that RB16B. Sparks flying out of the back.
You know what what's missing on that Red Bull?
Go on.
No rake. No aero rake.
Which, yeah, true. Absolutely true.
The only car that's just gone straight out.
Carried on.
Straight on with the programme this morning.
Clearly happy.
Get out, get on it. I like that. That just looks right, doesn't it? Sergio Perez in a Red Bull. It's like it was always meant to be.
Getting his opportunity across the line, the 1 career race win, the 10 podiums.
Which came here.
At the outer loop.
He was always a bit of a Bahrain specialist, wasn't he? He got podiums here for Force India.
Would have had a podium in this configuration of circuit if it hadn't been for the engine level.
Yeah, exactly. And also had a great scrap with his then teammate Jenson Button in the McLaren. I always feel he's been unfairly maligned for that year at McLaren. He was far better than the results suggest, and far better than his dropping from the team at the end of the year. I think has led people to believe he was. I always liked the fact he got his elbows out that year. I always liked the fact that he didn't sort of pander to the experience of Jensen. He stood up for himself, went racing. I always really respected that.
It's not the tidiest lap, this, for Sergio Perez, off the racing line in a couple of corners. Joining us in a few moments' time, we're going to be heading trackside for the first time today, and it gives you a different perspective. Before we go trackside, though, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who was bringing us the pictures around the track yesterday. Spoke to a couple of the camera personnel at dinner last night, and they said they'd been sandblasted with the conditions. It wasn't the easiest day to bring us, but it's great to get a perspective with a former Formula 1 driver standing by trackside, which is what we've got in a few moments' time, as Sergio Perez comes back to the pits, sparks flying out the back of the car. And we can now join Karun Chandhok, who I'm not entirely sure where he is on the track, but I'm looking forward to hearing from him for the first time. There he is, turn 7. Hi, Karun.
Hey guys, I'm on the outside of turn 7, similar place to where I was yesterday. But the wind has turned 180 degrees. That's the first thing to notice here. Yesterday we had a wind coming from that end of the track, so you had a tailwind coming up the start-finish straight. Now it's gone a full 180. In fact, I might get the camera to show you the flag on the top of the Royal Tower, which is turned a full 180 degrees. So that's made things a little bit different. It's made the approach to a lot of these corners different. You know, for example, when you're heading down into turn 1, the difference between a tailwind and a headwind could be something like 20 meters on the brakes in terms of how much later you can go. So it's going to be quite different for the drivers, and therefore for the engineers to look at the data. They've got to factor the wind in while interpreting what they're seeing on the data. I've been watching Sergio Perez here, his first few laps in anger with the Red Bull. He obviously did the shakedown at Silverstone. And one thing I've noticed yesterday when we were here with Max, we saw the car didn't quite seem underneath him in the morning. I think they made a big step and improvement as the day went on. Certainly the afternoon, they looked very good. Checo here, straight off the bat, seems to have picked up where Max left off yesterday. Car looks very good, very balanced. He's able to use the middle of the road line, so he's able to do the right-hander, give himself the width to carry good speed through the left-hand part of turn 7, drop downhill to the braking zone of turn 8. And what's also interesting is I'm seeing sparks coming from the front of the car, the front of the floor. They're really burying the nose into the ground, which they weren't doing yesterday morning. So where they are now is where we've seen Red Bull in the past. You know, the front of the car running very close to the ground. Here we see Nicholas Latifi in the Williams, but this is my first look at Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes. So I haven't seen Lewis out on track so far. I think they did some aero rig running earlier this morning, so I'm looking forward to watching him here. I'm going to watch a little bit more up, down at turn 7, and then we're going to wind our way around to turn 11, and we'll catch up with you guys in a little bit. And yeah, hopefully I'll have some more insights into what I've seen of the Mercedes by then.
Thank you very much, Karun. Appreciate that. From one Formula 1 driver in Karun Chandhok to another one. We've been joined up in the comm box by Jolyon Palmer. Morning, Jolyon.
How are we doing?
Very well, very excited, going on board with Lewis Hamilton.
You can tell the quality of our commentary has been up to par when Jolyon's been listening for the last half an hour and thought, I really need to go and give these boys a hand.
They're struggling. No, none of that at all.
Just Will's reeling out the anecdotes nice and early. better get to the comm box.
We haven't got to the Saturday races yet today.
No,
the sprint races.
Although I was very nearly late for commentary because Crofty was bending my ear on that. So that was good.
What was his thought today? What's the Crofty version of sprint races today?
I'm not going to tell you because that is for David to tell you.
Look at the broadcasters
later on in the day. You know, I don't want to ruin what he's going to tell
Spoiler
everybody
alert.
about his time. Exactly. I could say what we're talking about just so he doesn't take my ideas and nick them and pass them off as his.
Well, what was your idea?
That's exactly what I put on there yesterday.
No, there we go. Perfect.
That I don't think it's going to work.
But it's going to happen. Well, the lurks.
Apparently the point system's changed. It'll only be the top 3 that score points now.
Why?
3, 2, 1. I don't know.
To help out the the big three.
Yeah.
If they didn't have enough points.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. Yes, no, let's not give points to the top 8, just 3.
We'll qualify, put the fastest ones at the front, and then we'll do a really short race and give the fastest one, the top 3, some points again. I'm not for
and
it
everybody
either,
who had a good qualifying,
not fully signed off
everyone
yet,
who had a
is
good qualifying can get back to where they should be, and we'll just start them 2 by 2.
Let's see. It looks like it will happen, though. All the mutterings so far from here are that the team bosses are happy with it, the teams in general are happy with it, the drivers are happy to give it a go, which does surprise me, I have to say. But for 3 races, it looks like it might be trialled.
Maybe they're all so convinced that it won't work that they've all said, yes, let's try it, so that
to
then
get it out of the way.
never have to discuss this ever again.
Gives us something to talk about, though, as Lewis Hamilton comes over the line.
And look,
on his way to a personal best.
As we said yesterday, at least they're trying it. And that's a really important thing, to trial something just to see if it'll work. And if it does, cool, great. If it doesn't, again, great. At least it was tried. And that's the most important thing.
Just recapping.
Not if it doesn't work, though.
Not if it doesn't work, exactly.
Not to just keep trialling things that don't work.
Yeah, bad ideas, trialled.
The knockout qualifying, was it a good idea that we trialled that?
Good entertainment, though, wasn't it?
We ran it.
Well, that's what's going to happen here, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hey-ho.
That was good entertainment for two rounds at least. Was that Australia and Bahrain? They tried it and never saw the light again.
The concept I always thought was relatively sound, but in practice it just didn't work.
I was the only person that enjoyed that, I think, in Australia.
Yeah.
Everyone seemed to hate it, obviously, because now I've seen it from the outside, I know why. Because it just led to absolute washout end of qualifying when you knew what was going to happen. But in the car in Australia, we had a lot of planning that went into being on track at the right time. You obviously have your limited sets of tyres, which is why it didn't work. But it was my first race, and I chipped down on the qualifying time, stayed in, and basically made Q2 in a Renault that arguably shouldn't have been there at the time. And I loved it. I came back in, went to the pen, probably spoke to you at the time, Will, and everyone was like, "Oh, that was a bit of a joke, wasn't it?" I was like,
"And you were like,
what?
Brilliant.
Are you joking?
Great.
Did you see how I drove?"
Yeah, loved it.
But again, I thought the concept was it just all it needed was a couple of tweaks, and I think it could have been really quite exciting. But that's the same with all these things. It's going to be fascinating to see how it works out, if it works out. And
we had some marvellous races last year.
Yeah.
Marvellous Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And one of which particularly was here on the outer loop, the Sakir Grand Prix. But we had Pierre Gasly winning at Monza, which is all coming from the traditional style of having a qualifying on a Saturday and a race on Sunday. Sure, the championship was an absolute runaway for Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton, but between that, you had to do a Grand Prix. Closing up the entire pack is got to be the priority, and with the cost cap, with the new rules coming next year, you'd hope that can be the case. And with the racing that we have between the midfield for years now, it's been very good, very unpredictable. One weekend you have Ricciardo getting a podium in a Renault, then you have the McLarens looking very good, then you have AlphaTauri coming to the fore. In years gone by, you've had Haas being best of the rest. So many different teams, Racing Point winning races last year, a race last year. That's where it's at with close competition. It's the gulf in pay gap really that's coming down as well, and the new rules should help it.
And as you say, the new rules, if they help that, then the trials this year won't be needed. And I think whatever the outcome of these trials this year, I don't think they'll come in for 2022 because everybody wants to give the new rules the time to work. And only if they don't would you then have to fall back on the potential for shaking up the grid through the sprint races or whatever. Hopefully those new regs will be bang on and we'll get exactly what we want.
We hope. We shall see what happens with those sprint races. Here goes Sainz.
Good first sector.
C3. Sainz, he looked like he struggled a little bit on his first half day in the car. In awful conditions yesterday in the Ferrari. A couple of spins. Didn't look entirely comfortable. But this looks like a better lap for him. C3 tyres, the mediums, and hooking up the apex nicely at turn 10. A bit more traction than there was on the exit there as well as he flicks open the DRS down towards turn 11. The wind changing so dramatically from yesterday is going to meddle with all the data points that they might have even tried to achieve in those awful conditions compared to slightly better conditions today. But Yeah, so as a reference of carrying over yesterday's stuff and trying to do testing items from today, it's pretty much ignore that. But Sainz is putting in a nice lap here. Properly on it. Car looks great.
So a better start to day 2 for Carlos Sainz around the 14th corner. The 15th corner is complete, and he's going to set the fastest time of the day. He comes over the line. It's a 1:33.0 as he continues down to turn number 1. And we can check in once again with Ted Kravitz, who has just watched that Ferrari disappear past him.
You know what? I'm getting quite used to that highlighter pen on the side of the Ferrari. Quite like it now, the highlighter green. Nicholas Latifi's just done a practice start at the end of the pit lane, just going through the systems at Williams, and he's getting his day off to a solid start. By the way, guys, have you noticed that Latifi? Well, I've noticed Latifi and Russell in the group pictures yesterday were wearing different race fire suits to what Roy Nissany was, the test driver. Yesterday, so don't quite know what that one's all about. But Lawrence Stroll, the team owner at Aston Martin, is just been sort of patrolling the racing green garage. He's just having a look at what's going on. Sebastian Vettel sat in the garage, as well as the McLaren as well of Daniel Ricciardo. So all quiet around there. And as we see the Haas going around, we're going to have Mick Schumacher trying to get a few laps in a bit later on, aren't we? I've got a morning teaser for you, Alex, JP and Will.
Go on, Ted.
Mick Schumacher, when he goes round turn 1, will be going round the Michael Schumacher corner. What other drivers can say that they've gone round corners on circuits named after their father?
Oh, not their father, but Bruno Senna would have done the Senna S.
Yep.
In Interlagos.
I've got 2. Let's see if you can. Yes.
Jack would have raced through Villeneuve at
Imola. Yes, that's one.
Would Damon have raced through Graham Hill Bend at Brands?
That's the other. I can't think of any others.
I'm sure we'll be flooded with the others.
Is there a Rosberg corner?
I don't know.
Hashtag F1 testing. That's a very good point.
But did Hill race that Brands in F1?
Not in F1.
No, I'm not putting F1 as a qualifier in there.
Is there a Palmer?
I mean, I could do, but I'm pretty sure.
Corner at Snetterton, 300.
You've driven that?
Sure, I've driven it. Yeah.
There you go.
So we're up to more already.
Drew Palmer, yeah.
Lauda. Matthias Lauda must have driven the Lauda curve in the A1 ring.
Must have done. Good question.
No PK corner.
Is there not? Not anywhere.
Can't think of one.
No.
Oh, yeah, let's hashtag. What's the hashtag?
F1 testing.
F1 testing, hashtag. I'm on it. Hashtag F1 testing, folks. If you can think of any corners named after racing drivers' fathers that they may have driven.
Thank you, Mr. Kravitz, for that teaser.
Nick Hamilton has driven Hamilton Corner, also at the Snetterton 300.
Was that named after Lewis?
After Lewis.
Really?
Yeah.
Goodness me. And soon he will be able to drive the Hamilton Straight at Silverstone.
Yeah.
I drove the Hamilton Straight at Christmas. They had the Lapland at Silverstone, which is where they turn the whole of the Silverstone circuit into like lights and lasers and smoke, and it was all kind of like Father Christmas. And Lapland, because you did a lap of the track. Lapland.
In what?
It was a Ford something. No, it wasn't like a fast lap. It was, with the family looking out the windows and waving at Father Christmas.
You weren't on the limit.
Not on the limit.
Everyone else just enjoying it.
It was really great.
Buxton hammering around.
No, it was great. It was a really lovely day out. Really, really nice.
Where's Alonso got to? He's got to turn 11, fourth fastest at the moment. Just on a personal best, sector 1. He's on his 11th lap of the day. Ant has pointed out on hashtag F1 testing that Jacques Villeneuve has raced on a whole circuit named after his father, of course.
Of course, Circuit Villeneuve. It's early.
And David has pointed out to the hashtag F1 testing that Josh Hill